I see this thing. The weird thing was, is as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, what is that? And I think, that's somebody walking. And all of a sudden, it was like it's a man walking. And I'm looking at it, but he wouldn't like come out of the road. And I yelled at him, but it was just weird that there was no interaction with this person other than they would turn their head and look at us. We get to the bend, we turn around it, we get around the bend, and they're still walking, but it's looking. But when it would turn its whole torso. This is the strange thing. And the only way I can describe it is, and it's 100% like Predator, 100% like that. And if you didn't keep your eye on it, you would lose it. We always saw it because we know where it was and we were watching it. And then you could see its limbs and you could see through it. But then it would flicker back and it would just be like solid. We followed him for like maybe 20 minutes and we just kept watching this, It's the same over and over. 100%. Like, to me, the thing that I couldn't get out of my head was when he goes clear. If you just watch the movie Predator, that's 100% what it is. It looks just like that. And it looked like it was glitching. I guess I'll start off with my grandmother. It would have been in 1965, Pittsburgh County area. It started off that locals were seeing these, what she would coin the term red blinkers, and they were like red lights that were blinking up in the night sky. And it was going on every night. And as time went on, sometime in 1966, she literally was in her kitchen and she saw. She got a phone call first. What it was, she got a phone call and someone said, "Hey, up on the ridge right above your house, something's there. Like maybe it's a plane that crashed or something. There's something there." So she gets out of the house, starts running up towards it, and it's from there to that spot. I would say it's like maybe 200 yards, if that. And she runs up the ridge, and right there is this huge craft. And it's just sitting about 5 feet above the ground. And I've asked her lots of times about it through the years. She's drawn me the same drawing, she'd always talk about it. But he described it as, of course, my grandfather being in the war, and they were around planes a lot there in the war, especially when he was stationed and stuff before they went to Germany. He was a paratrooper, so he was comparing it to those. It was bigger than the planes they jumped out of. It was more like that small bomber. She said it was about from wingtip to wingtip. It was about that size. And she said it. But what was interesting was it was metal, but she said it had pop rivets on it, which was always strange to me that it would be pop riveted, because that was somewhat the technology that we had at the time.
Yeah,
I would think to assemble. And they had a little, like, she called it like a little observation thing at the top, and it had windows in it, and it just sat on the top. And she said she didn't see anything. She said it would vibrate once in a while. And she said she was yelling at it a couple of times, and she felt like something was watching her, but she didn't see anything. And then all of a sudden it just vanished. And a lot of people saw that. That wasn't something that she just saw, and it was recorded in multiple places. And my grandmother had a local radio show. I was out of McAllister, and the show sort of turned into a kind of a call-in show eventually with UFOs, and people would call the house, and even up. This was, of course, way before I was born. This was my dad's eras, but even in the 70s and 80s, every summer I spent every single summer with her as a child, and as even up through high school. I lived with them in high school as well, but people would always call and give her reports of things that they had seen, always. I mean, there was always UFO stuff. And then as a child, we would get in the car and we would go out in the country and we would see these red blinkers. And I've seen them in the daytime. I've seen like cigar shaped ones and whatnot. But with my grandmother, there was one thing that no one really knows about, because she didn't want anyone to know this. But I asked her. I said, do you mind if I ever was to share this? And she said, once I'm dead, I don't really care. She kind of laughed about it, but she didn't want anyone to know this. But she was in her kitchen, and anyone that's been to our house knows that we have a carport, and the drive goes through one street through the other, and in the middle of the kitchen, in the corner of the kitchen, there's a window that's tinfoiled off. And sometime in the 80s, I was a child. I remember the guy working on it, but they redid their kitchen and she put her refrigerator there over that window. But what had happened was she was cooking at the stove, and she saw to the right something was looking at her. And she looked, and she literally saw, I guess what they would call a gray, back then. And she said it was just staring at her. And then another one, out of nowhere, she said, just kind of bumped into it. And she said they were very clumsy, like they didn't, almost mechanical. They had the big eyes, all that. And she said it just like stopped her, And then this was not too long after she saw that craft land on the side of the hill, same year. And then the thing runs, I guess that would be to the east side of the house, there's it's all neighborhoods now, but back then it was just a few houses. And it used to be a dairy farm. But anyway, but before those houses were there, it was just there was cattle and a few trees and hardwood trees and things. And she saw the craft take off and go up, and then just pretty much disappear, like in a blink of an eye. And that's how the other big craft took off too. It just blink of an eye, it was gone, right in front of her.
Did she happen to say if the crafts looked similar in design?
No, not at all. This other one was small. It was just, if I remember right, I'd have to clarify with my dad. I think it was more like, I know it was small, but it was more saucer-like. Because when it landed, she went there later, and it had a burnt ring on the ground. It was burnt. And she had acorns that were in there that were in a little pimento cheese. She makes pimento cheese sandwich all the time. It was a pimento jar, those little jars.
Yeah.
She kept all that material in that jar. And later she was told that it could be radioactive. And through her connections, I mean, really, it was kind of a big deal back then. And she had sometimes as many as 40, 50, 60 people in the yard, all parked out in the grass and everything, just looking at the sky. And she had people from some universities and there's a lot of, it was just there's a lot of information you could read up on all this. But, back then in the 60s in southeast Oklahoma, there just was a lot of activity. But anyway, someone gave her a Geiger, some kind of a little Geiger counter thing, to read radiation or whatever. And so, and I don't remember much about that, like if it was or if it wasn't. I don't remember. I was a kid. I wasn't really interested in that kind of thing.
Sure.
Back then. My dad, and like I said, I probably myself saw at least 50 UFOs, minimal, really, really good memories of them. There's probably way more than that. My grandmother, my dad, and uncles and all them saw way more than that. And my dad actually had one. He was, I think he said he was like 9, 7, 8 or 9, something like that. He came running to the house full speed, and he said one was chasing him. It was like kind of like a UFO orb kind of thing. Chased him in the house, and my grandma said, "You stay in the house," and they were all freaked out about it. And then later, another incident, sort of in that same area, just where I was telling you, on the east side of the house, there was one of my dad's best friends growing up in their backyard. One was like hovering back there, And him and my uncle went over there, and my grandma was yelling at him, "Hey, don't get close to it." And he was like, "You guys come back." And they got a little bit closer than she wanted, and there was a red light that came on, and it was shining, it was like it was trying to shine that light on them. And they ran away, So, but there's a lot of little crazy stories, just of seeing crafts and things. But those two were the main ones my grandma saw as far as that thing landing, because I was really close. Like I said, she's like 5 feet from it, way well within 10 feet. And then the two things that she saw in the window, uh, and then uh, later, I would say in the 80s, I lived in as a child. My dad, we moved, got a house south of Tulsa, and we lived in a suburb there. And I remember riding my bike with three friends, and one of those orbs flew right above us. And we were like, "What is that?" And it was like I couldn't really get a gauge on the size of it, but I would say it was probably diameter, maybe like 15 feet, maybe 20. And it was completely round, but inside was encased like this, I don't know if you want to call it like lava moving around, sloshing around it or something. And it didn't make any noise except for like a wind noise. Like it was going through the wind.
Yeah.
And it probably was going about 45 miles an hour, I'm guessing. It wasn't terribly fast, but it went right above us. And it wasn't very high. It wasn't high at all. We didn't feel the wind or have a weird feeling or anything like that. It just went on. We were just like freaked out about it. Just I don't know. I don't know why we didn't like talk about that all the time, but we didn't.
And this was daytime?
Daytime, yeah. It was sun was almost down, not quite. It was lit up though. You could see it around. If you were in the woods, I'd say you wouldn't be able to see much, But out on down the street, it was fine. Street lights probably just kicked on, if that. My dad, though, same time frame, but I don't know. I can't remember if it was like how close this was. He came running in the house, and I've never seen my dad like this. Just freaked out, run in the house, and like ran into the room, and it was like, and I'm like, what's going on? And that ball that he described when he was a kid came. He saw it coming out of coming from the horizon from the sky, and it came towards him. And it just like when he was a kid, he said, and it kind of traumatized him for a second. I just clarified that story with him earlier today, just to try to remember everything about it. But yeah, he said it. He said it just reminded him when he was a kid and the fear that thing put on him. But I'll fast forward a little bit to 1989. So this is in southeast Oklahoma in the Jack Fork Mountain area. We have some property out there, and me and a kid I just moved from the Tulsa area to out there. I've been out there my whole life, but I had just moved to this town because I was just living with my grandparents in high school, so I was really close to them. And so I met a kid there that was new, just like me, and we kind of hit it off, But within a couple of weeks of school, I would say that puts us in like August 1 or something of 1989. I said, "Hey, you want to go out to our place? Maybe like hike and just, just maybe we'll see some wildlife or whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, that sounds cool and all that." So, and I wasn't old enough to drive, of course. So my dad, said, "Hey, I'm going to drive you guys, drop you off wherever you want to go, and then I'm going to pick you up," because we were building a cabin on the side of this big hill, and my uncle was already going to be out there working on it. So he's like, "Well, just do what you want to do, and then before dark, just show up at that cabin." He said, "Just don't wander too far off because there's a lot of land out there, and it's a big area." you definitely can get lost for sure. And we take off. So my dad drops us off probably I would say a couple of miles from that cabin, but there's a lot of landmarks that you can find your way around, like in that if you stay kind of close within the area that I was at that point familiar with. And we started walking, and uh, we walked all day. We got a little turned around, and it's kind of funny because we have since built another cabin. It's a log cabin. It's about a mile around the bend from where this first one is that I was mentioning with my uncle was working on. But we have a couple of log cabins out there that we built where we hang out at presently. But before they were built, we got lost and we ended up in that area. And I think that's kind of important to the story. And I'll get into that later. But we were walking around and I was like, trying to figure out, well, and the thing is, I was really close to where I was familiar with, but how does when you're in the woods, it's really, really thick out there. The woods are a lot of trees, as you know, in southeast Oklahoma, and I made a wrong turn, but I kind of had the right bridge, to go up. It just ended up being like the long way, but whatever. It was getting not dark, but it was, it was time to head back. So we walk up to the top of it, and I recognized that road. And we had a camp up there. We called it Alpha Camp because it was like the first place where everyone camped or where they were deer hunting stuff before there was cabin being built, and before it was when we were just tents. And my buddy's dad. So I had a 22. I was carrying a Ruger 22, and he had a 410 just to have on us. And his dad gave him like a box of shells and said, "Don't shoot all the shells up. If you can shoot some, if you guys want to target practice or whatever." And I had, of course, 22 rounds are small, lightweight. I probably had like 80 rounds or 100, whatever comes in that little pot, that little, back in the day, you could buy the ammo. I think it was like in a little plastic container. I think it was 100. And I had that in my back pocket, and then that one 10-round clip, that goes in it. And we get to Alpha Camp, I recognize it, and there's a fire pit there that was always there. And there's always, if you dig in there, I know there's like some soup cans, there's something in there, And I said, "Hey," I said, "we're like, we're not far. We're maybe like 20 minutes up that road, or give or take 30 minutes, whatever. And then we'll be, there's a certain landmark I think a lot of people would recognize, so I don't really want to say it, but there's something there that would, really illustrate the area. But right down from there on the side of that is the cabin, And I thought, well, let's set these cans up and stuff I pulled out of there, and we'll target practice for a little bit because my dad will be here soon. We're going to get back. So we did, and I shot up everything I had, which to this day I'll never do again, never. It's big time. I will never do that again. And thankfully he had, but a 410. I don't want to get shot by it, but I wouldn't be afraid at 30 yards if someone hit me with, I think I might could survive it. Maybe hit me in the leg or something.
Yeah, we always called him a snake gun.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like, but he had that, and he did have rounds only because his dad told him. So that's why we had it. And the thing is, it's a single shot. It's old school. It's a safe gun, but it's like, it's not really good for any kind of a serious situation kind of a thing. And so here we start walking, and we go maybe, I don't know, maybe not far, maybe just 20 yards. And I see this thing, and so this road, it's like an old seismograph road. You know what those are, right? Seismograph cuts. It's an old seismograph cut, and on the right and left side is where they bulldozed it. And the road's basically straight, but when you're walking in this knot, you're going to see maybe 30 yards in a slight bend, etc. So you can't see all the way down it, but it's generally a straight road. And when they bulldoze it, because there's a lot of rocks out there. There's rocks everywhere. Every 6 inches, there's a rock, And then, so all these rocks are all piled up. The weird thing was, as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, what is that? And I think, that's somebody walking. And all of a sudden, it was like it's a man walking. And I'm looking at it, but he wouldn't come out of the road. And I yelled at him because it's like I said, I mean, pretty much we knew everyone that was out there, and it's gated. There's a combination lock. And I think there was even 2 locks you had to get into to even get to that area. And I was like, so I'm like, hey, and I thought, maybe someone saw a shooting and was just like, hey, who's that? And then they're like heading back. But it was just weird that there was no interaction with this person other than they would turn their head and look at us. But we don't know. I don't know who saw him first, because when I was looking at him and staring at him, I was getting ready to say something to my buddy here, and he was already staring at it. So we don't know. We don't know who saw it first, but he's like just looking at it, and I'm like, because this is the weird thing about it. At first, I'm thinking it's my uncle, like initially, but he doesn't look proportionally like how my uncle's built. He doesn't walk like my uncle. And I'm going to say this is probably about 40 yards from us at the most. I mean, at the most, it's 40. And it kind of, just disappears as it goes around the bend of the road. Like I said, it's straight, but for them, you can't see straight down it. So we get to the bend, we turn around it, we get around the bend, and they're still walking, but it's looking. But when it would turn its whole torso. Like he would take his right, you could see his right hand as he would twist and look back at us. It's like he didn't have a neck,
Yeah.
And the head reminded me of my mother's hair, because my mother's Native American, and she has long black hair, and it's like from the back, well, one with long straight hair, how it kind of there's no neck.
Yeah.
It looked just like that. And as we're getting closer, I'm like, what is that? But this is the strange thing. Two very strange things. Well, very strange. It's all strange, but as you would look at it, it then would just go clear. And the only way I can describe it is, and it's 100% like Predator on the show, like with Schwarzenegger, 100% like that. And if you didn't keep your eye on it, you would lose it. Like we always saw it because we know where it was and we were watching it. And then you could see its limbs and you could see through it. But then it would flicker back and it would just be like solid. I didn't see hair or anything. It was just not quite close enough to us, but it was dark. And then we would follow it for like, I don't know, maybe I'd say maybe at this point we maybe got even maybe 30 yards, 35 yards to it. And then it make another turn. And so I said, hey, and I don't know why we weren't really fearful at that point. I don't really, there was no fear involved. It was more like, it was sort of a mixture of fascination and being curious, I guess, and probably just being just dumb kids, not really having any sense, I suppose. But
right.
I go around the corner and I said, hey, let's run to the corner, because we couldn't keep up with it. You could tell looking back what it was is it's like the stride. His stride was just way longer than our stride. And that's why we were constantly at a hustle. We were at a fast-paced walk, slight jog, just to maintain this thing while it's walking. It makes that little bend. And I said, hey, let's run full speed to the bend, and we close the gap on him. He'll see us, And we run. We get to the gap, same distance. And he's turning and looking at us. And he never would step out. He always had the foliage, because the leaves haven't fallen yet. It's still, a couple of months away from that, or a month and a half. So it's very green and, real bushy and thick. And he just stayed right along that, just kind of scraped up against it, but he never touched it. I don't remember seeing limbs moving in anything, but yet he was right up against it somehow. And he would walk on those rocks and on that edge that, that was bulldozed. He would just stay right there. Never would come out. It's sort of like what a deer would do, Sometimes they'll come out, but they kind of have their back up against, foliage and things that camouflage themselves. And he very much like an animal. And we followed him for like maybe 20 minutes, and we just kept watching this and kept watching. It's the same over and over. But the 100%, like, to me, the thing that I couldn't get out of my head was he's going when he goes clear. And I mean, if you just watch the movie Predator, that's 100% what it is. It looks just like that, like the technology or whatever. And it looked like it was glitching, like not like a TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not like you'd see like a blue line or anything crazy like that. But it looked like, if I had to guess, looking back, this is of course just a guess, as any of it could be, but it was as if he thought he was always cloaking, but he wasn't, and then he was. You know, like he thought he thought he was hiding from us, but it would just turn on, and he would be just exposed for, like, you know, maybe 30, 40 seconds, and then he would shut off, and he would go back clear for a little while. And as long as you kept your eye on him, you could see him. But I can tell you, if we hadn't been watching him, and then we just automatically just started popped up on the trail, and he stayed in that cloaking mode, you would never see him. 100, you would never see him, because there would be times when he's walking, you really couldn't even see him, and then you'd see an arm move, or you'd see a leg, and then you start, you know, your eye would focus in on it, and you could sort of see a slight outline. So we're walking down that road, and there's the land really opens up, like there's really big mature trees, and it's not bushy. And before that, there is I call it a briar thicket area, and it's probably like, I'm going to be surprised if that's not 2 acres of just briars. It's nasty, and you don't want to walk through it. I've never walked through it. I think I heard somebody try to go after a deer one time in there, and they said they didn't get 10 feet. It was just a nightmare. So, you know, of course, I'm familiar with this area really well, and so I told my buddy, I said, hey, I said, at this rate, we're really going to see like him come out. He's not going to be able to be up against that brush like that, because he's going to be exposed, because there isn't any more of that. And he's just like 20, 30 feet from this briar stuff. And I said, he's not going to go in that briar area, because he can't walk through that. Like, it would be impossible. So at this point, for the most part, he's committed to going where I'm hoping he's going. And then now we're going to be able to see him. And I want to say we got as close to him as maybe 30 feet at maybe one moment here and there. But where does he turn? He turns right into that briar area. Exactly. Like right in the middle of it. And on top of it, he hit a tree limb with his head as he went in. I saw that. And it was like, I saw it and I marked it. I didn't mark it for any reason other than where he went in. But when we got to it, that tree limb was 9 feet, every bit of 9 feet. And we just sat there and we just stared at each other. We didn't even talk. We're just like, what did we just see? And when you look down into those briars, I mean, you didn't see where he went. You didn't see it. You know, if you saw like a cow, you know, just walk through there or anything, it's going to leave something, you know. I could see a deer squatting down low, maybe, you know, delicately getting through that, possibly, you know, but still going to see something. But I didn't see any, and I'm not like some massive expert tracker, but I have, you know, I'm decent. I can kind of see, I can track a little bit. I didn't see anything, you know, nothing to show any kind of sign that anything had even gone through there. And so we walked down the other side. That's on that side of the hill. On the other side of that hill, or they call it a mountain, but it's not that big, but it is really long. We went down maybe 300 yards, and that's where this cabin is, where my uncle's building. And he, you know, never seen anything like that. We never did. And so it was like, oh, you know, you saw a bear. I think you saw a bear. I was like, no, it wasn't a bear. Like, I'm telling you, like, it wasn't a bear, you know, like, that pretty much was the first thing that, you know, we all sort of saw out there. But right before that, maybe 6 months ish, give or take, a guy named Steve, he's like extended family. He comes out there a lot, especially back then. But there's a pond right there at the base of that cabin. And he was down at the water. I guess he was just, hanging out, or I don't know what he was doing, but he said he was just kind of sitting there. And he said this rock came flying over him that was like 300-pound rock. And it landed right in front of him, like 10 feet, and splashed like mud and water all on him. And that was the first like really weird thing that we, really had to try to figure out what that was, and which we couldn't come to any conclusion. And then later I had this thing. And from there, I would say there was a little bit of time went by, maybe like a year or something, and my uncle was driving up the mountain adjacent to it. And now that one's a bigger one. That one is that one, as I get further in the story, is where all the weird stuff is. It's on that and our new log cabin. Well, not new. I mean, we built that log cabin maybe in '90s, like '95, '96 or something like that. That's sort of on the same mountain. It's at the foot of it. So from our cabin to there, and that there's like a big area, and like we mentioned before, it's like a bowl, down in there. It really is. It's like a big valley area, and that is where all the crazy stuff happens. The ridge where we followed this thing was, I would say, like the outer perimeter, but anyone really pretty much outside of all that doesn't really see any of these things. And the reason why I mentioned earlier, we were walking and we kind of popped up when we were lost. Me and my buddy were walking around before we saw this thing. When we were down there in that area, I feel like maybe maybe we stirred that thing up, because that's the area where now all the things I'm going to tell you that happens is all down in that area. So that's quite possibly. He could have been following. I assume he was following us, but who knows? But so anyway, so the next, I would say, so my uncle's on that next hill, and he's going out really fast. I'm sorry, my mind's all over the place here.
Oh, you're good. I mean, this is a lot to unpack, man.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a couple questions about the cloaking.
Yeah, please.
Was there any noise associated with it?
No. And back to that cloaking thing, I never could get my mind wrapped around that. And if I just had seen it briefly, I don't know that I would even remember it, or I maybe just block that out of my head. I don't know. I probably wouldn't, because I've seen a lot of weird things, So growing up the way that I did, things aren't really going to shock me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I still would be like, that's so abnormal, and it's not natural. And maybe it's just my, something in my eye or something. Well, for years and years and years, and I've told this story to quite a few people, but for years and years and years, I would like Google, like cloaking Bigfoot. There would be nothing. No one talked about it. I never heard about it. And I just couldn't make a connection ever. And one time we were going on a float trip up on the Buffalo River up in Arkansas. We were kayaking up there, and I was driving like from Houston up there, like one big haul. We were taking turns driving, and it was like way in the wee hours. And if you turn coast to coast on, it was like something to listen to, and
Sure.
I was looking forward to do some coast to coast, and that would give you something to listen to and make time pass. And I need to look up the episode, because I know roughly when that trip was. I think I can pin it down to the day, actually, because the photographs that were time stamped. Well, anyway, I was driving, and everyone was passed out, and the guy was talking about, and I think he was in Louisiana, but he was in like the southeast part of the country. And he said this thing he's describing a Bigfoot. It's in these trees, and it was cloaking, and that was the first time I heard anything. And then I got all excited. I was like, that's what I've been waiting for. And then I'm going to say I lived in Pennsylvania for a while, and up there, I was working, and I just had the radio going, and I think it was when that 411 stuff really kind of started out in the very beginning, like the very, very beginning. And he was on a few podcasts. They said something, and it made me want to go check. And so I Googled it again. I mean, like 7, 8, 9, 10 times a year, I would Google cloaking Bigfoot just to see, because something's going to pop up. And lo and behold, there was a story. Someone, posted something. Now, since then, there's quite a few things that it's a discussion now, at least.
Sure.
And there's some images that are out there, but that's really all I know. Is there wasn't anything. All I can really say was it just flickered, and he would go solid, and he would go clear, and when he went clear, it was identical to that movie.
So you're like looking at it and it goes clear. Does it distort the foliage behind it? Does it blur it or anything? Or is it just crystal clear?
Little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit from what I could tell. It would seem like what I saw, and I'll hold to this, like I said, I know there's a lot of interpretations on things, and to some degree we're still early in our knowledge and all this, but I'll hold to this. What I saw was a technology. I 100% feel like what I saw was a technology. I didn't really feel like it was ghostly, or it was, some kind of aberration or something, or a mirage looking or anything. I saw something that was, something that was physical like me, but then had a technology associated with it.
Okay.
That was able to, but that's really all I got on that. The only advantage I got is I followed it for, hundreds of yards. So I really got a good, we got a good view of it.
Yeah.
Really good view of it. But never he wouldn't let us get any closer than, I couldn't get close enough to see hair or like facial features. I could see like a thumb, and I could designate like a hand when he would twist. But he walked as if he wanted to turn around, he had to twist his whole abdomen. He wasn't able to just swivel his neck, because he consistently did that. That was one thing I noticed. And his arms were a little bit longer than normal. He didn't have them drop down. They were kind of swaying. But when he would twist, that's when you would kind of see that arm was like, the proportions were off,
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't massive. Like, he wasn't like as massive as some things can be. He was, I would say, I don't know, I wouldn't be a good judge of weight when you come to that size, because I don't have anything to compare it to. But I would guess I'm around 9 feet. Could be a little bigger. Could have been 10, because when he hit that tree limb, I don't remember if it was his neck or the top of his head, or if he ducked down underneath it. He could have been 10 feet, but probably not more than that. Probably closer to 9. And I would guess about, like, maybe, this is a wild guess, and maybe like 1,000 pounds, 900 maybe. Once I saw him, it's funny when you see something like that, your mind tries to associate it with what you know.
Right.
And it's really difficult to, since, these arms aren't right, or this neck's not right. You have to think back. And had we followed him as long as we did, I don't know that I'd have enough information to recall anything, but that was the only good thing about it. So time goes on. I don't know, maybe like, this is all like within the next 5 years, more or less. My uncle, the same one who thought it was a bear, he's driving down that mountain, going up the big mountain. And as he's going up, it's an ice storm, and all along the edge of this road are these really small pine trees, like 6, 7, 8 inch diameter, and they're real tall, And the ice storm was, he was trying to get his truck parked and get on his 4-wheeler and unload it, because back then we didn't drive down to our cabinets, because the road was just a little bit too rough and it was hard to get in and out of, and especially if you got inclement weather. So he was trying to get to his cabin and get a fire going, etc. So he's hustling up that road in his truck, and he's by himself. And he says that the weight of these trees holding the ice was starting to like lay down in front of him on the road. So he's knocking them over, going through them. And he said all of a sudden right in front of him was one that ran right in front of him. And he said he said it was a female. He assumes because he saw breasts. He saw it was hairy. He said it looked like it was about 6 feet, if I remember, maybe a little shorter. And he saw like a butt. He remembers the butt well because he saw it go down. It just dropped down because the mountain just really has like a lot of shelves to it. He couldn't see it anymore, but he saw that. And so once he saw that, obviously I think that was that he knew, that I didn't see a bear, and then from that point, I'm going to say we started experiencing rock throwing, tree snaps, and stuff like that. But we didn't know what that was, and we didn't, we weren't really into this kind of thing. We not that we were experts, but we had a lot of experience with UFOs, but not with this. So we didn't know to separate these events and to think about them. It was just like, that's weird. Like, what is that? But I can remember being out there and thinking, like an old dead tree fell, and like it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And that was often. Not like every time you went out, but 1 out of 3 times, somebody's going to experience something. And then there would be rocks would be thrown like on the roof, they'd be like little rocks, and it would, you can't miss it on a tin roof,
Sure.
And then another weird thing is while we were building that cabin, we set up tents, and we would just crash out in tents. But there's a couple of areas that we kind of like to camp, but all within like, I don't know, it's all within like 10 acres probably that we kind of pretty well frequented. And in that one of those areas, I remember, and it wasn't just me, it was multiple people that's been out there, hear the strangest metal sound, like take like sheet metal, and like kind of bend it and flop it. I don't know if you've ever heard anything like that from anybody, but just oddest, like whoop, 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 like flapping around and weird. And it wouldn't go forever. It'd just be for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then later you'll hear it again for a minute, and you just won't hear it again. And you might not hear it again for a while. Like, and I mean a while, like, the next time you go out, or maybe the next 5 or 6 times you go out. And there was a time when we heard that. And like I said, it's private land, and we know everything it's not like people come down there. Does that make sense? And
yeah,
it's impossible almost. And in the middle of the night too, like you can't really walk around down there without a flashlight. It's impossible. It's unless you just know the road really well and you're on a really good trail and you're just comfortable with it. But for the most part, you can't just go walking through those woods. And we don't see lights, we don't see flashlights, we don't hear 4-wheelers. You can hear 4-wheelers a mile away if you listen sometimes, and none of that. It's just hear this weird sound. But I don't have anything more on that other than it was just multiple people heard that. And then we would see then eventually we would see a tree snap. And then we would be like, we would see like it's, I mean, it's torn in such a way where like it's just shredded,
Yeah.
Sometimes like 8-9 feet off the ground. Just took the top off. There's one spot on that mountain. I don't remember what timeline I'm just throwing this in there, but I remember seeing like maybe 20 trees. And so we're initially thinking, it must have been a windstorm blew through here. But the more you look at it, it just doesn't make sense. And it's just that one little area. And all those trees are snapped, way up there. Really weird. And then one time, my uncle and his buddy and a bunch of them, my other uncle, they were sitting on our porch before we put a roof on that porch, but they were all just sitting on chairs, just relaxing in the evening. And they said something flew over low, and it was big, and it just covered the whole sky took the stars out and everything. And that was it. I mean, there wasn't any more to it, but they were all pretty well kind of freaked out about that. I would say footprints. And I have some photos, but they're everywhere. Photos aren't like a big deal, I guess, to get nowadays. But multiple footprints. But as far as the Bigfoot ones go, but as far as this other footprint, I saw this a couple of times, and I'm not the only one that's seen it. My dad's seen it. Different people have seen it. It's three-toed. And it kind of has the ability to bend those toes weird sometimes. Like they're not like stuck out. They kind of like can kind of bend like a circle. I don't know. It's weird. And I've seen those in like good mud, like good prints. You know, at first I thought, well, that's a cow. Then I thought, that's not a cow. And I thought there's something wrong with its foot. And then that's not, then the more I get to looking at them, and it was a consistent pattern of basically a small like heel thing, and then these three toes that went out, and those, like, you want to call them phalanges or whatever. I would say they're like maybe 8-9 inches, a piece roughly.
Wow.
And 3 or 4 inches wide. But they would bend them sometimes. They didn't just stick straight out. I don't know what that is. But like I said, that wasn't just seen by me. And I'll tell you, we would hear howling, and different weird sounds. To this day, I mean, there's weird calls and stuff that go on, in the middle of the night, whooping, all that stuff. But at this point in time, we're starting to figure out that it's, this Bigfoot stuff. So now everyone's kind of on board, and we're like more aware of it. I'm up at this. So that, I would say this point would be like in the 90. That first thing happened in 89. So this is probably all the way up to, like, say, this wasn't all like in one weekend. This is over some time.
Sure.
I would say maybe up to about 99. All this stuff right here, just like around that, from about 89 to 99, about a 10-year period. But the thing is this is just stuff that I know of, and off the top of my head, there is a lot of stories that other people. There's people that have gone out there and won't ever come back. I know of 2 people. There's they all, and other people in our group, they all have their things they've experienced mixed in with this. Some of this, of course, is crossover, and some of it would be, we'd all be out there, but one guy would be off and he would see this or that or whatever. And it wasn't like every time he went out, but I would say 1 out of 3 times, you're going to see something or experience something, and then sometimes 2 out of 3.
So there's just pretty regular activity going on in this region, and if you spend enough time there, you'll hear or see something.
Yeah. I'll get to that too, because I brought a couple people out there and we experienced things just like I thought. We also one time saw 5 doe deer, laying on the side of this open area. They were laying side by side, orientated the same way. Eyes cut out, genitals cut out, and heart cut out. So no blood, no mess. They're clean. And they were just laying there.
Huh.
And
all female.
All female and orientated exactly the same. Nothing touched them tonight. I would say within 2 days, they were kind of being dragged off. And then after that, they were skeletons, coyotes and stuff probably got them. But yeah, so something, there's the animal mutilation thing. But I never saw any other thing like that as far as the mutilation stuff. But that's like a needle in a haystack out there. We just happen to see it.
Yeah.
Who knows? That could be going on all the time. You're not gonna know that.
Did you guys experience any, what you would perceive as aggressive activity at the cabin?
Yeah, I would say, okay, so I wasn't at the cabin, but I was probably like on this same mountain. We can call it the area, you know. I was up maybe 300, 400 yards. No, that's probably about a quarter mile up. And there's a road. It's actually the same road where I was telling you my uncle was going to stop and park his truck and get out of the four-wheeler and, you know, go down right after he saw that one with the butt, the female one. Well, on that side of the hill there, or mountain, on the downside is a bunch of blackberries, like a bunch. And every year, I always take a boonie hat and I fill it up like twice, and I give it to my grandmother. My grandma would make this amazing blackberry cobbler like every summer. And I won't mention this other person because this person I haven't talked to in a while, so I shouldn't mention his name. But this other person was with me, and he's just a kid. And I was like, hey, let's go out and let's go grab some blackberries. You know, we'll just run out. Just give me like 45 minutes. And he had like some Hot Wheels and stuff. And I was like, you know, so you can like play like in the road. There's just like a lot of like pea gravel and stuff. There's a little area there. And I said, yeah, bring your toys. And I said, I'm gonna pick these blackberries. And I started picking blackberries. And all of a sudden, this rock that's probably the size of a softball just rolls like 3 feet from him, 3 or 4 feet. Just and I'm like, I'm looking at him and I'm like, you do that? Because it didn't make sense, you know. I mean, I can hear him, you know, playing with cars and like he's in my peripheral. I'm not like 10 feet from him. And I'm like, and I'm looking at him and he's like, oh, what was that? And then now I see one in the air coming, like, and this thing's hurling it from the other side, which is probably from there going up the mountain. That's probably like 50 yards throwing this thing. He's in that wood because there's an open area. They dug that whole area out to make a dam for that pond that's below there that I told you about earlier. So it's like they dug out the side of the mountain. So you know how like it's all eroded and really steep. You can kind of picture it.
Yeah.
He's above that. You can't even walk up that. That's like 4 stories tall. You know, he's above that somewhere. I can't see him. He throws 3 times at us, but by the third time, I grab him. I throw him in the car, and I had a 357. Like I said, I always have something on me, and I just picked a tree just in case it was an idiot doing it and a human. I didn't want to kill anyone, but I'm not gonna throw rocks at us. So I just pick a big tree, and I'm a pretty good shot with that pistol, and I just shot like 3 rounds into that tree and got in the car and drove off. But it didn't want me messing with those blackberries, I think. That's the only thing I could gather.
Yeah.
And then another guy got, I'll tell you a story about him. Like he saw one maybe 10 years ago, like pretty clear in the daytime, but one threw a rock at him in the back and it stung. He said, I think it left a whelp on him, but I'd have to ask him more about that. But, never had like, you know, nothing what they're capable of doing. Nothing like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't personally feel like they're friendly. You know, I don't want to, they leave things. And I think we don't really lure into that. You know what I mean? Like, just the other day, like a week ago or something, my sister and my brother-in-law and their grandkids were out there and they were picking flowers, probably like a mile away. And they went back to the cabin and then they were, they didn't pick too many. They just picked a few of different kinds, but there was like these certain white ones that the kids were looking at. And they got back and then there was a white one that was picked, but like the root and everything. And it was laying on the table we have outside that we eat at sometimes. And it was almost like saying, I don't know, they didn't pick it. And there's no flowers it's so dense where we're at. Flowers don't really grow in there, and it's rocky, and the terrain's just not, there's no flowers down there. But where they went, it's open up area. And they thought that was weird, you know, like it's trying to leave things, and it will leave stacks of rocks. And it's funny because the cabin door, you know, in the threshold right there, when you open it, it knows to stack it just high enough that you can still open and close the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's stacks. Yeah, it's always 3 high, and they're little flat rocks, little like river rocks. But it's enough that it knows that when you open the door, you'll see it. And they'll do that when you're out there. Like you'll be gone and come back, and they'll be there. That kind of thing. And that with the other day with the flower, they said there was some rocks stacked out there too, like the calling card or something. This is the story that I like to tell. It's probably my favorite one, but because it was cool because of something else. But I'll tell you that here right now. My brother got some night vision, like 3rd generation. It wasn't like really good, but it was decent. And me and my brother and my friend Mike, we decide that we're gonna like walk from the cabin to this open area where they were picking the flowers again. All this stuff's like the same places where we go because we usually do arrowhead hunting out there. There's a lot of arrowheads and stuff. So we had this idea that we would walk to that area and not turn the flashlights on and just see what we see. You know, we were hoping to see some coyotes or maybe, I doubt you would see a cat. It's really hard. I've only seen cats out there twice and they're running and they're really far away. But, you know, something cool, you know, we were just animal watching basically. And no lights. And I have my hand on my brother's shoulder. Mike had his hand on my shoulder. And we walked slow in the dark. I mean, like, we took our time and we were walking. And we're like maybe probably 500 yards from the cabin. And all of a sudden, my brother stops. And he's like, I think he said, wolf. So they dropped a bunch of wolves off. This is why I like the story because of the wolves. But anyway, I'm sidetracking here, but it's a cool story. We immediately turn our lights on. And there was a big black wolf standing right there. And he looks at us. And then he just goes up the mountain. But then when we shine around, there was like, I don't know, a whole set of eyes around us. Like they probably thought at night, because we were touching each other, like maybe we were like an elk or something. I don't know. But once we split up into 3 men or whatever, man, they bolted. But it was really cool. It was like, but anyway, where the weird part comes in, we go a little further. We go around the bend. We make it to that clearing area. And I was like, hey, let's set here. And I think it's a good spot. And we sat in the middle of it. And you're probably 30 yards in every direction. 30 yards in front of me and 30 yards in front of the guy behind me. We're sitting like in a triangle. And backs to each other is just dense forest. But we're in this little grassy clearing area. And we're sitting there. And all of a sudden, and at this point, too, in time, I've started to develop a kind of a, I don't know, I don't want to sound flaky, but like a sense. Like I can kind of tell when they're there. I don't want to say like it's a telepathic thing or whatever. It's just like it's just a vibe I get. And I'm batting 1,000 with it. Like I know every time because there's always something that happens. And I was starting to get that sense like, so, you know, there's something here.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I can feel the like the pressure of it, you know. And then of course we're dead quiet, and then you can just hear like every now and then. It's a dead still night, you know, and there's no crickets, there's no birds, there's nothing at night, no whippoorwills, no nothing. It's just like every now and then you just hear like a, and it's right in front of me, and it's like, you know, it's probably not even, I don't know, like I said, was it like maybe 30 feet, whatever that is. And it's like, and then all of a sudden, little tiny rocks were it was throwing little rocks. At first, it was hitting the receiver on our guns, like ting, ting. And then it hits my brother right in the forehead. And my brother goes, ow. Because he thought I was clowning around, you know, because I tend to do that. And he's like, are you doing that? And I was like, no, it's not me. He's like, what is that? And it starts hitting me. And then it hits Mike in the back of the head. And, you know, we're getting uneasy. And then the feeling was really uneasy, like very uneasy. And just didn't, it just didn't feel right. You know what I mean? And I knew that's what it was, one of those things. So we agreed no flashlights, and we were holding to it. But at this point, we had 30 rounds each in our guns, but my buddy Mike had what the old moss in the gun bolt action, and so he that was his excuse. He turns his light on, and of course you don't see nothing. I knew you wouldn't see it anyway. And he turned his light on, and through the night vision you couldn't see nothing. You couldn't see anything, like as far as it, but it was close. And he turned that light on, and then we turned our lights on, and he's just like, let's get out of here, he's like, you guys got 30 round semi-automatic rifles. I got this bolt action. He goes, I'm not comfortable here, and blah blah blah. And, we were laughing, but I see his point. So we left, but 100% it was throwing rocks at us. But we sat through it for a good, I don't know, I don't really know the time. I have to ask my brother, but I'm going to say we had to sit there and take those rocks for at least a minute or 2 minutes. It was enough, because we were actually kind of thinking, I was kind of questioning it. I was like, but there's no trees above us, like no trees. There's nothing above us for quite a ways. And whatever this was, I don't know if you've ever thrown a small rock, and I mean like almost like those little rocks that are like in fish tanks and stuff.
Yeah.
The little blue, that size, very tiny. And it wasn't enough to hurt, but it was enough to sting. And it was like, how could you, it would be hard to throw that thing, like even like 15 feet and hit something.
With accuracy, yeah, it'd be really hard.
And with a little velocity, a little bit. It wasn't like, a bullet hitting us or anything, but, it was enough that it was uncomfortable, and you had to, it's like going down the road and, rocks hit you or something. You're on a dirt bike or a four-wheeler, something like that. But, yeah, that's kind of like one of my favorite stories there because of the wolf, I guess. But
you said they dropped wolves off out there?
Yeah, they did. They dropped. So we had a really bad, somebody brought in some Russian boars, and then we had a bad hog problem. Bad. They were like, affecting the deer population. You can see where they run. They were big and they're fast. They're really big. And this had nothing to do with that. I'm just saying they just started kind of taking the area over. Somebody dropped them off in there. And somewhere out west, way out west, like Panhandle, some ranchers or something, they wanted to relocate some, and they dropped them off out there, and they're still out there because you can hear them, but they're not like they were. They kind of stayed in our area for years, and then every now and then you'll hear them because you can hear coyotes. They usually, sometimes you hear them at 11, sometimes like between there and like 3 a.m, and if you hear them go crazy, you know how coyotes sound. But when a wolf howls, that's a whole other ball game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I haven't seen any in quite a while. That's probably going to be like 2003, 4, 5, something like that. Maybe 3, early 2000s. And something else that's kind of weird in the area, and I think it's all disconnected. So back then, we didn't really associate Bigfoot with anything more than it's just some creature that's just kind of slipped through the understanding of man, and that was sort of our take on it for a long time. And we didn't really connect, and I don't know why. I don't know why we never thought about it. But all the other strange things that we have happening, we never really made a connection of, multiple anomalies, in one area. And it was kind of crazy that we never even thought that as an option for some reason. But we had some other weird, strange things too. I was at the cabin once and by myself. It's funny. I used to go out there all the time by myself. I used to get on my four-wheeler and unload on like 11 at night and drive till like 3 a.m. Just drive around the roads and the trails, for hours. And nobody does that anymore, and I wouldn't dare do that now. But I was out there one time, and this helicopter was just flying right above me, When I say above me, I mean I could feel the wind off of it, and it was low. It was like telephone pole height, just as low as he could get and as close as he could, because there were a few trees. The cabin's sort of cleared around it, but right above me, and they're looking right at me, literally. And they weren't friendly. They weren't waving. It wasn't like a military helicopter, but it was just a little small 2-man chopper. And they just stood there staring at me and I just stared at them back, for like maybe a few minutes. And then they took off. And then another weird thing is, always like when we'd all go out there, especially as a family or even just whoever, the last day, we would always have breakfast and then we would go looking for arrowheads, and we would always find stuff. And we have like 3 or 4 places. Well, yeah, 3 good places that we go, and one of them's relatively close to the cabin, and it's like maybe like 150, 200 yards, and it's around this little bend. And we went down there once, and we would always go there. And we get this idea, hey, if we take a shovel and scrape around here, maybe we'll find like more tools, like, because, there's a lot of sediment. And when the water runs off it, it's pulling them down from somewhere. We couldn't figure that out yet. But we went down there one time and someone took a bulldozer. And I don't mean a small one. I don't mean like a DC-10, but like a big dozer. And went in there and just bulldozed all that up. Like shortly after we started messing around in there with like shovels and stuff. Dug all that whole area up, pulled it all. And that's on our property too. It's not like it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just turned it, knocked all the trees over in an area about this, I don't know, maybe 50 feet by 50 feet, something like that. So they took the time to drive all the way in there and then just rip that whole area up. I mean, just turn the whole soil and everything, and then that was that.
Huh.
It's odd.
Yeah.
And then not too long ago, my dad and uncle were in the cabin, and they said there was a helicopter flying right above the cabin at night. But they said it was definitely a military helicopter. It sounds a lot different. And it was just hovering there for a while. Then it left. So we've had some like weird stuff like that. So there's other things involved and in play here, I think, possibly.
You had mentioned, I think, in your first email that you sent me, a few of the things that you've talked about, but one of the things that you mentioned was finding glyphs in the area.
Oh yeah. Okay. So glyphs. Now that's more recent. It's not chronologically in order of where we're at, but that's fine. That's more super recent. Like 3 years, 4 years recent, I guess. 4 years. I was with a friend. We went there for the sole purpose of she was really into all this stuff. And, I was talking about our area, and she and I had a crazy thing happen in Blue Ridge Mountains, which I could tell you about that if you want, but super crazy. And so anyway, we go to our area and I think it was during Thanksgiving, if I remember right. And of course, everyone's down there, we're all having a good time. And, but during the day, for the most part, we're like looking for signs, looking for this and that. And we take a walk and I see a Mylar balloon. Probably came from some town, and just drifted or whatever is what I'm assuming. But it's, I'm looking at it like garbage, anytime we don't really have any garbage out there, but anytime we see something, we always grab it, take it, haul it out, So this is on the back side of the hill of where our cabin is. And then the front side faces this big mountain I've been talking about this whole time. But on the back, there's all kinds of stories back there too. Most of those have to do with other guys because I never went back there often, and other guys hunted it. I just kind of, that was kind of like their area, But there's like probably 50 acres, just that one little dip right there. And I know a couple of people for sure that hunt back there. But I'm like, hey, let's go walk back there. Because I kind of sprained my ankle earlier, and I thought maybe it might be kind of good to like walk a little bit because I don't want I didn't come out here to be all bound up. And so we start walking up the hill, go down, And there I see this Mylar balloon with looked like a teepee, stacked, like the way the poles are, and then a few things around it, and then that balloon was kind of merged with it, which didn't look natural. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't look natural for those sticks to land like that and that balloon to be with it. I really didn't think a lot about that, other than it was weird, and I just chopped it down in my mind. I thought, okay, well, maybe there's something to it, because why are they stacked like that? They were all grabbed from different areas and brought there, and no one goes back there. And one of the guys that hunted there passed away, a few years back, and then the other guy just wouldn't do that, and none of them would leave trash out there, like, for sure. I mean, none of us do that. So I take the Mylar balloon and I just tie it to the side of my belt loop or something that's just kind of hanging on my side, and I start walking. And I go down this trail to the bottom, and we swing back around and come to the front of the cabin. And when I'm standing down there, I get that weird feeling again, and I stop, and I'm just trying to figure it out. And we're not far from the cabin. We're maybe 100 yards or something. If I can kind of hear them, shutting the door and et cetera over there and talking. And my friend was a photographer. She took a lot of shots, like 5,000 shots or something out there, and all kinds of things. And she's shooting up on this cut, like this little cut that went up this main mountain. And just went up a little ways, stopped. And I'm not looking up there, but up there, he has a photograph. And in one photograph, she's showing me the picture, and she's really, really into editing and really into details, and she really pays attention to everything, plays around with the color and all of that stuff. And she saw later something that was there that wasn't there. I could send you really any of these photographs I mentioned. I could send them to you, but I didn't take the shot, so I'd have to, probably I don't know if I can make it public or not. I'd have to ask her permission, I guess, but I don't think she would care. But anyway, you can see in my mind the head. You see his eyes, his nose, his ears, and his head, but the rest of his body you can't see as he's standing there. And he's I would say, I don't know, 10, 15, probably 20 yards in front of me. And he's little. He's a small one. And for a lack of a better way to describe it, I want to say almost like an Ewok. Kind of looks like an Ewok head. And that's it. You just see this head. But I had that feeling right there, like something's watching us. And it's and I didn't connect it with the Mylar balloon at this point. So later in our we were there for a few days, I believe. And one night it was late, and our cabin's a one room, so everyone's just at night, cots everywhere, And I told my dad, I said, hey, I think, I told her, I said, do you want to go because I used to always drive at night, but I was a little hesitant. And I said, you want to take a ride, maybe just, because we were going to leave soon, and I wasn't going to go anywhere to the crazy places. And she said, I don't know. What do you think? And so we made an agreement that if any one of us was uncomfortable with any part of the trip, we would immediately turn around and head back as fast as possible. And so we did. We took off, and I told my assassin, we're not going to be gone long, probably maybe we'll just go up this other mountain and come back down, 20 minutes or something. Maybe 30. So we drive down this road. It's really cold. And so it's November. And I saw, and I had gone over this road multiple times that day, and even that before it got dark, because we worked on looking for things up until dark every day. There in the middle of the road were rocks. I'll show you. I'll send you a picture of this. And they were and I took this photo, so you can do what you want with it. But these rocks were in a shape, and they were little round ones, and you can see the pattern of them. And it just made this big, and it was it's like 6-7 feet, and it just had an arrangement in the road, and they weren't there earlier. And one thing, is I'm just really good with noticing patterns and things like that. And I would have 100% seen that at least one time out of that day. And no one else even saw it. And we saw that. But at the same time, I got that and I don't know if that did it, because, your emotions can do all kinds of things to you. But I felt really not like when those other things are around me, because that's a different kind of feeling. I just felt like we don't need to be here. And she did too. I mean, I could just tell her eyes, she's looking at big eyes, and I was like, let's get out of here. And we turned around, and we weren't even gone 5 minutes probably the whole time, because we just drove to that spot, turned around, and came right back. And the next day, my buddy, he's like extended family, he comes out there all the time. His name's Mike. They set up a trail cam in an area out there, and they picked up this ghostly thing that shot the camera off. It has like antlers on it. It's really weird. You can kind of make it out, but you can't. And he had it on the trail cam. So he shows us the image on his laptop, comes over, and we ate breakfast or whatnot. And I said, hey, let's show me where that was. Like, I want to see that spot. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, I heard you guys saw something. I said, yeah, something weird on the ground. I said, now my mind is thinking about those sticks and then these rocks, right? I had never thought about glyphs, or I didn't even know that was a thing at that point. I honestly don't like read any, not that I'm against it. I probably should. I don't really read any books or watch movies or anything really pertaining to these subjects. So, I'm not really up on what's out there for the most part. The only thing I really was obsessing over was that cloaking thing. But, I kind of got information on that initially, but so I didn't know anything about glyphs, if it was a thing or what or anything. Now I'm thinking there's a pattern of things on the ground, or maybe this is a sign or a language, or maybe it's telling others that, who's at that cabin, or I don't really know. And when he's like, well, show me your thing first. And I'll show you where that thing is that on that trail cam. And I was like, okay. So me and my friend hop on the 4-wheeler, and he gets behind us, and I said, well, follow us. And we get about halfway there, and he's kind of pulled up next to me, because you're going right where I'm going. I was like, really? And we get to the thing, and then show him the rocks, and he's just, looking at them, and we're talking about that. And he says, well, what's funny is right here is where you turn, and right in there, it's right inside the woods right there. Inside there, not too far, is where that camera popped that off. Huh. Same area, I don't know if it's connected with that or not. I don't know. All I know is that it was a bad feeling. But one time I was up, that mountain is a different mountain, and it's adjacent to the one that I've been talking about. On the downside of it, which is well, it's just hard to explain. But anyway, on one of the side of the mountains there, I was riding by myself, and there's a Snyder road, I assumed, it went straight down. It was really steep. And I never really been down there. I've been almost on every road, every trail, and I had always heard it just petered out, and it just went straight down, and there's like a creek down there, a runoff, and it just stops. And it's really steep. And I thought, I think I'll go down there. And as I turn and go down, I get about halfway down, I had the most craziest fear. Like, I call it artificial fear, because it's whatever that emotion is that we have that's called fear. I had nothing, we contribute to that. We have an experience, and then that kicks in, whatever, fight or flight or whatever. This thing just out of nowhere, just for no reason, just was at this heightened that fear. And I'm like, what is this? I'm like wrestling with that emotion. I'm thinking, what is this? Like, why am I feeling like this? And then it got to where it was like death, like I was facing death. And then I could literally hear not thoughts, but like impressions in my mind, like don't come down here, you will die, or stuff like that. And I didn't really mess around with that. And it was hard turning that four-wheeler around because I was like coming down, and it was gravel and rocky, and not gravel, but just rocks everywhere. And I had a hard time turning it around to go back up. The best thing, the safe thing would be go to the bottom, turn around and shoot up. But it would not let me go further than what I was going. It just got, I think if I went any further, I would have curled up in a ball and be uncontrollably fearful and not knowing why,
Yeah.
So anyway, I got that thing turned around, and man, I ripped out of there as hard as I could. And I got to the top. Fear was gone. I looked down that mountain, and then it just shot back at it. It shot back at me. Like, don't even look down here.
Huh.
And man, I left. To this day, I've never been down there.
Are there areas around there that have that sort of feeling to them?
Yeah, there is. There's another area where I used to hunt, and it's far away from everyone else, and it's on that same big mountain, the main one I'm telling you about, but there's a ridge that's kind of behind it. And I would hunt on the top, and there's kind of like shelves all the way down it. And I would hunt that one shelf. But below that, like 50 yards, there's cliffs, rocks. I wouldn't say cliffs like something crazy, but like, but there's big rocks. Some of them are like, 10, 15 feet tall. They're all scattered through there. Down there, that area feels different. That area, and I've mentioned this before, even my dad, when I first told him years ago, you're right. It is like that. That area just doesn't feel like you need to be there. And I would hunt the top, but I quit doing that after a few years because I thought, if I went after a deer or anything, I can't. I'm not going down there. Like I'm not going to go down there. So I gave that spot up. But there's that one, and then that area where that photograph was shot on that game cam that I was telling you about. That area is another area that doesn't feel right. And when back in the late '80s, there was a tent that they found set up out there. And it had a hat and a chair, and a guy. The guy's not going to leave his cowboy hat. I just, it's just
not around here.
No. And his cowboy hat was there, all his sleeping bag, but the tent was like kind of somewhat weathered. Been been in the elements for I don't know how long. I think it would at least take a couple of years to degrade a tent like that, I would think. And all his stuff was there, and that's in the same areas where this thing was. This like the trail cam and all that. I would, back in the earlier days, I would walk through there by myself a lot, and I would think, I don't really want to be in here. Like, and then there's another spot way on top of that same mountain behind it. It's adjacent to the other. So when I was mentioning where I got the fearful thing, there's a I wouldn't call it a cave, but there's an overhang. It's like a cave, but it's very small, more like an overhang. And there's been a fire in there. You can tell it's I don't know how old that fire was or whatever. But on top of it, this is really, really high. I was up there one time. It was deer hunting, and it was like really thick, super. You can't really even see 5 feet out from trees and grass and just everything. But you'll get that fear sometimes from just could be any kind of there could be a cat laying down in there or something. But I got it there too, but nothing like. And I never went up there after that. So I don't know if that's a consistent thing. But those other two locations, very consistent with, I don't know. I just don't like going in there. And there are a few places that we just don't go. Like it's just gaps between trails and roads. And there might be a 10-acre spot where there's just nothing. No one goes in there, because it just happens to be an area where we maneuver around. And I wonder what's in those places. Maybe there's a reason why we don't go in there,
Yeah.
I don't know. But I'll tell you something else. I moved to Pennsylvania for a while, and I didn't go out there for a long time, like 9 years. And I came back. Oh, and I had something happen to me in Pennsylvania too. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but anyway, I came back to Oklahoma. Well, I mean, I've seen my parents and stuff, but what I mean is I wanted to go to the cabin, and so my brother-in-law swung by with my sister and my nephew, and he was going to go out to check his deer feeder, and it was like, I'm going to assume it was like this time of year, and he knew I wanted to go to the cabin, but there was a storm coming in. It was just my luck, and I hadn't been out there in a long time. And he's like, well, he goes, the storm is going to start like at 6 a.m, start raining. We won't really get stuck out there if we stay the night and we leave by 8. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll just get a Jeep, whatnot. So this is like 11 or 12 at night, if I remember. He's like, you want to go out there? And he said, I'll do my deer feeder thing. You can just we can just have breakfast and we'll head back out. And he's like, you can at least sleep in it. He goes, we have two little cabins close by. And then my uncle's is like, I don't know, 30, 40 yards on the other side. And he's like, you can crash in your cabin with or the one that I built with my nephew. And then, so we're driving up, and it's the same ridge where I saw that cloaking thing. And about where he turned in, I was telling you about earlier, that's about where we're at. And we're high above, and you can look down, and way down in there is, and I know the land even in the dark, because I know where everything's at. You know what I mean? And I'm up there, and I'm like, what is that? And down below were these red lights, like just red lights, string of red lights. They were pulsating like at this cadence, like 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5. And they were fixed. Like, I think it was a V, like a V shape, like a V wing craft. And the thing about it is, in the front nose had a red one. And it was, I'm looking down at it, and from where it was sitting in that whole area, it was almost from point to point, almost a mile. So this is not a small thing. And my brother-in-law's first, it's kind of funny because he's like, oh, those are cell phone towers. And I was like, I said, there's cell phone towers down there. We all should be getting a check. You know what I mean? I'm like, nope, those aren't cell phone. That's right above the cabin and everything down there. I haven't been down there in a long time, and I'm looking at that. But here's the weird thing, and I can give you lots of examples of this. We all had our phones in our hands. Because right there is the last spot. You get like 1 bar, 1.5. Once you kind of leave that area, you're not going to have cell phone coverage except for in a couple of spots. You don't get it at the cabin. There's no cell phone bars for anybody. And I remember I was checking maybe my messages or something. I don't remember. We all had our phones down. Now, one of us took a photo, or thought about taking a photo, but we all had this thought, or I know at least me and my brother-in-law did. I haven't asked my sister that or not, but my nephew, but was to go down to the bottom and get a better shot. That was the thought. Like, and it's dumb because to get there into the cabin, it's like a 20-minute ride. You know what I mean? And I'm like, why would I not take a photograph? But that happens all the time out there, to the point now that I really think there's something to that. It's like the projection of the fear, that I had. Well, anyway, my dad and uncle saw one in the daytime up on the hillside, and my uncle's an architect, so he's doing numbers and all that. And he's got, we got all the topo maps of the area and everything. So, but anyway, he was able to do the calculations of the size of this thing. And the thing was like, what was it, like 60 feet tall or something? And wide, way wider than it's tall. And it was just hovering there. And they watched it for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. And then they get an idea that they didn't take a picture of it. Never come across their mind. They get an idea to go down to the bottom and get some chairs and maybe come back up and watch it. But then they never went back up.
Huh.
And later, when they were up there later in the day, it was already gone, But Yeah, I don't understand that, but there's something to it, and that would kind of make sense to me. That explains a lot of things to me. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Do people see orbs in this area?
There, okay, so less than a year ago, my dad and his girlfriend's laying in the cabin, and he happened to. He said he was just kind of half asleep, wasn't quite asleep. He was just kind of looking out the window, and he said this white orb was like 15 feet out in front of the cabin, going like 5 miles an hour, and it was about the size of a grapefruit, or something, and it was moving just like real slow, and it just like it was kind of scanning the area, but it didn't have it didn't emit any light. He said what was weird is it was white and it was bright, but it didn't emit light. Like it didn't project its light out. It only glowed within itself. And then another one came behind it, and it was a little further. He says you could see it orientating, going around trees, because where he was, that's pretty well cleared. Like we got most of the trees away, but the other one was a little further down. He says about 15 feet off the ground, and it just went by. I saw. So I was with a friend once. We went out there, and he doesn't really believe in any of this stuff. He what he says is, Mike, I feel like you're an honest guy, and he goes, I believe anything you say. He said, but I think you just don't know what you saw, and it's just kind of one of those answers,
Right.
And we're driving out there, and it's there again. It's not quite. It's almost dark, but not quite. And here comes this red ball, kind of like the one I saw as a kid, and it came towards us and flew right over us, and probably like 55 miles an hour or something like that, about the size of a small car, but round, and just flew right over us. And I was just like, okay. I said, what's that? And it's funny because him and his brother and his buddy and me, I think it was just four of us. It seemed like there's a fifth person, but we were at this one little area, which is actually the base of that mountain of those rock cliffs where all the areas I don't like to go. There's a big body of water that collects right there. It's a pretty good sized pond. And at the very end of it was something big. And from where we were to that's probably about exactly 100 yards. And it was squatted down, but every now and then it would move like its head. It was big. So we had a light, and we shined it on it. And it had like fire orange eyes, that kind of lit up. Not like super bright, but you could tell. And the eyes were in front. And it was big. I would honestly say if that thing stood up, that's like I'm going to put that in a 15-foot range. That's how massive it was. And he wouldn't stand up. He just stayed sort of like just sprawled out. But you could tell by his shoulders and his head and the way he was swaying. We got out of there. That was the end of that. And they saw that. So I don't know how they dealt with that.
Explained it away.
Yeah.
Was that shaped like a Bigfoot?
Yeah, but it was so far away. But yeah, he didn't have like antlers on his head or anything weird like that. It was just shaped like, honestly, it was shaped like what you think the biggest Kodiak bear you ever could think of, minus the snout. And the shape of the eyes were too close together to be a bear. You know what I mean? Like I didn't see if it had a snout or not, but if the face didn't fit to me of anything that I've ever seen. So I would put it in the Bigfoot range. Yeah. If I had to put it in some category.
I just wanted your opinion. I mean, we're talking about multiple kinds of different phenomenon, for a lack of a better term, over decades.
Yeah.
Is this something where there's something about the region that these things are attracted to, or do you think there's some sort of connection between the actual things?
I think just in an opinion, uh, I've come to the conclusion, just where I'm at with it, is I lean really more towards the whole Book of Enoch, Nephilim thing. That just really jives with me.
Okay.
And I believe that area was probably something in the past or something, and it's either sacred or there's if you believe in portals, maybe there's a portal there or something. There's something very unique about that area, uh, and they've allowed us to stay there because we haven't, we don't live in harmony with them, but we're not really a threat to them.
Right.
And they've interacted with us. And I'll tell you something, how I know that they know us. When back in the, I don't know, mid 90s, I bought a compass at that Army Surplus store I think it's still there. That was up there. What's it like? Memorial or Harvard, maybe in Tulsa. Anyway, there's an Army Surplus store up there, and I bought a compass it's like a military compass, but it's different and it's plastic and it's unique. Like you can't get it anywhere else. And I've never seen one like it since. I bought that compass and had it with me for a while, like maybe like a couple of trips. And one thing is I don't lose my gear. Like, I know what's in my gear. I know where it's at. I know everything about my bag when I pack it. And there was a picnic table that we had out in front of the cabin. And sometimes, like, when you're going through stuff, I just kind of pull it all out, put it all back. I lost that compass, which I would never do that. Like, it just wouldn't happen. And I never found it, never saw it again. That was like, I don't know the year, but let's just call that like 97, because it was around there. I see that craft 10 years later. Oh, no, 10 years later. That was like 10 years ago. Whenever I told you when I went back and we saw that craft, down low. Okay. I go back with a friend, and I mentioned the story of with the balloons and the glyphs. The first morning, we get on the four-wheeler, and I said, well, let's go down to this water. There's a couple of good water sources through there. And I said, let's, water holes. I said, let's go to this water hole and just, kind of give her the lay of the land. And I don't know, between where I told you that story is with that possible like Ewok thing in the cabin, which isn't far. Right in between there is it's either an old logging camp or back in the Depression era, people would live out there sometimes to survive and feed their families because of the deer and things. So they would just go to the woods. And we always left that alone. There's like a fire pit. There was like some old mattresses and just a bunch of debris kind of rotted, but it's in there, And that's how I found that area when I first went there in '89 with that. We popped up on that spot. But anyway, it's just like a deserted camp. Right there along the side of the road, like 2 feet, was an old fence. Like the fence is way over 100 years old, you can tell, and it's notched. And it's laying on the ground, and I know where that fence is and that fence line. So it dragged it over there from there, which is in the area, but it's not close. It took items out of that fire pit. There's bottles and stuff in there. Some of that might even be worth money, but there's stuff in there from a long time ago. It took items out of there and arranged them like in some kind of a like general circle shape around this flat rock. And then there opened up is my compass, pointing through that little crack of that, orientated through that, the compass. So we're driving by it, and she's like, "Oh, what's that? What's that?" And I look down, and she goes, "Is that a compass?" And it's just like right at her, just like right below her. It's just like right there. It's like a 2.5 feet from her. And I'm like, I mean, you couldn't miss it. And I'm like, I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking to myself, that looks like my compass. And when you picked it up, like the water was all gone out of it, and it was like kind of a little bit corroded on the inside, but the outside was brand new because it was a brand new compass, like brand new. And my dad, probably just my dad, but probably everybody else has been by that road so many times, even that week, even that day, and no, that compass wasn't there. And my dad said that wasn't there earlier today. And one thing about us, because we do, we, like I said, we arrow hunt. We're really like out there looking all the time. Like we're always looking, and not necessarily for these things we're discussing here today, but like just my dad's a rock hound. And he likes looking at cool rocks, and we're just always looking at stuff. We're not just like meandering through the woods with our heads in the air. We're always just looking, and I think it set that up to know that I would see that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But why did it leave the compass there when that was my first day there back? Other than when I saw that craft out there, but why did it saved it for me? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you didn't know that the compass was missing?
Yes. I lost that compass in, like, let's just call it 96 or something. I lost it.
Wow.
And I knew I lost it because I told you I know my gear. Like that's why I was telling you that. It's like I knew the compass was gone, and it always bothered me because I thought that I liked that compass. That's the reason why I bought it. And there's a whole story why I bought that exact compass. But anyway, the fact that I lost it made no sense to me because I just never would have lost it. Something, I think it took it off that table when my gear was out there. It was only really exposed out there once. And it probably sat out there for a few hours with my other gear all organized and, wasn't haphazardly just thrown around.
Right.
So it knows us, with my dad, they leave 3 rocks a lot with him. They don't leave rocks like that for me. I've seen it once, but I don't, I was with other people too. But I know that they kind of getting back to what we were saying earlier, they know, I think they know us to some degree. Later, I'd say 2 days later, me and that same girl were going down one of these trails, and a big rock flew right by us. Like, I don't think it hit the 4-wheeler tire, but I feel like it did. But when you're going over rocks, sometimes it just makes a sound. But I saw it bounce, and it was a big rock, like the size of my head. And she saw it too, and she's familiar with the rock throwing thing, not because she's experienced it, but just through discussions. And I stopped and turned the 4-wheeler around because right there it's kind of wide open a little bit, and I'm looking, I'm scanning, I don't see anything. So then I think we sat there for a minute or two, and then we drove back. I stopped, I look, and I saw in the wood line one running, like, just fast. But what's weird about it, we both saw, but what's weird about it, and I've heard this before from other people out there, it didn't make any noise, and it ran faster than it looked like it was running. What I mean is, I could tell it was moving fast, but like it was easy for it to run. Like it just kind of, it looks like it's running 2 feet off the ground, not touching the ground, but just being like ripped through the forest.
Yeah.
Although he was on the ground, he glided through. Like if you could ever picture something, and I've seen deer run and other animals, and they do run. They have a good feel for running through brush and stuff like that. But it's nasty thick out there, and you didn't hear it ripping through trees or none of that. It just glided, and it was fast. And I saw it from his mid shin all the way to the top of his head, and I saw all of his legs and arms. He wasn't cloaked or anything. He was just hauling butt. We saw that. And then back on that same, we'll call that mountain number 1. We go up there, and I have been on that mountain. I don't want to say a million times, but I feel like so many times I couldn't even count. And you get up there, and you can see around, and that's where I don't really want to mention on here, but I told you earlier that's where you could see that one landmark, from a distance. And I always stopped up there, and I always look at that, because it's a nice view. And we then would we proceed on through the trail and go, a little further down, and then on the right up there, like 300 yards, is that area where I would hunt, and I would tell you that's where that feeling is, But backing back up on the very, very top, uh, I've never felt this way. And I've never done this. Because I go up there for it's a big loop. There's just and it's a nice drive. And that was the whole purpose to go up there, was to go because even if you stop there, there's two other places that you can go to. So if you see that one, you always go to the next one or whatever. I've never stopped, and I felt that feeling. Like I knew not to go forward. Like I knew not to go across that. The top of that mountain is pretty well cleared completely, and I would say is probably maybe 150 yards from where I was to where the trees pick back up again, and you go back in there, and now you're heading towards where I hunt at and everything. I stopped on the other end, and I knew not to go forward, and I was just like, we're going to turn around. And she's like, really? That prompted her. She took her camera out and just started taking crazy photographs, like all the way around that whole thing. And I'll send you this. This thing I didn't see it, but the photographs picked it up. This thing had a foot in one. I've showed so many people, they always get creeped out by this picture. It had 1 foot in one tread of where the tire would be and one in the other. So you have a gauge, you can measure that, right? And so let's say that's roughly 5 feet. This thing had a foot in one, a foot in the other. And he was every bit of 3 to 3.5 times that height.
Wow.
And he had horns, some kind of a horn thing on his head, some kind of an antler looking thing on both sides. And he's just standing there, and he is massive. And that could have been what was down on. If you stay right where he's at and you go down that mountain, you're where I told you about where he was squatted down. So my buddy saw that. It's all around the same mountain. But anyway, you got to zoom into the photograph to see it. You know what I mean? But once you zoom in, I mean, he's just right there. And it looks like he might be holding something. I can't tell. It's black. It's blurry, but not blurry. Not blurry that you can't see the outline of it. And I took my best friend out there one time that I grew up with. I don't know, just a few years ago. But it was after that. That would have been like the year after COVID or whatever, is when that shot was taken. And I had him stand in that same spot, and I think he's like 6'1" or 2 or something. And he just looks, he looks insignificant. It makes me think that guy might even be bigger than that. But he wasn't just tall, he was wide. You know what I mean? Like, just massive. But for that to be walking around, like, you think he would leave something. You know what I mean? I don't know. But there's, you don't see like big prints or big, And I'll tell you something else that's weird out there. Like I said, we see a lot of prints. I mean, that's not like super uncommon. And then especially in certain areas. And I mean, I don't want to say I would guarantee a print, but I almost kind of would. And because I took another friend out there, like after that time, and there again, she was a photographer, and we went out there for this purpose. And we actually found like maybe maybe like 5 sets of prints, and we had plaster, and so I casted one. I've never casted before, I casted it, and she took a lot of photographs. And it's like he came out the road, and he turned. But you know what's weird about these things is that you never see you can't follow them. They only go so far and they stop. They're here, and they'll be like, and this is common. Everyone out there will tell you this. You'll see maybe And I don't know if they're jumping, if they're, something that we're not even thinking of, or if they're, you know, being taken out of here through something weird. I don't know, but you'll just see it maybe for just a short while, and they just completely stop. And so there's no end or beginning to them. There's just a little run, and that's it. That's pretty consistent. I don't know if you've heard anything like that before.
Oh, I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Me and this first friend I was telling you about, she and I were just getting cabin fever. Like, I'm not really an inside, cat. You know what I mean? And I'm like, she's not either. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. Like, I said, you want to go to the Blue? I said, I need to be in some mountains. Like I need some mountains and just like some fresh air and some trees and all that, and to get kind of charged up here. And she was all excited. She's not from America, so she's from Europe. But anyway, she's like, yeah, let's go. So we're looking at it. We decide we're gonna spend a few days and go up into the Blue Ridge, and you don't get a lot of, like, my maps wasn't working good. I don't know if it's just bad all through there or it was my phone or whatever. But I thought, well, let's just take a couple of back roads, and just kind of like, that's where all I know back home, like the back roads I know, that's where all the cool stuff is, and the water, the swimming holes, and all the cool stuff is on the back roads. I thought maybe we'll see something cool, and all she really wanted to do was see a bear in the wild, and all this. And of course, later she goes to Oklahoma and sees some crazier stuff, But anyway, to this day, I don't know why. It's odd to me. And I didn't, at first didn't think much of it, obviously. But now, especially looking back, it's really weird that I would pick this road. But we're going down this main road, and I've since then Google mapped it, and I found it, where it's at. And I turn off, and it just starts dropping down this mountain. And we're in a car, we can't go too crazy. And we get to the bottom, and there's a beautiful little river, like a brook, and it's like 3 feet deep. It's flowing, and it's like, it's like Hobbitville, down there. It's just beautiful green and these big trees. And there was a pallet, like right on the shore there. And I thought, you know what? I think I'm just gonna chill out on this pallet. I just want to just chill out here. And she there again, she's big into photography, so she's gonna do photography everywhere. So we made an agreement that we would just be within a certain distance where we could see each other constantly, And I was more concerned about just weirdos, And I always, there again, I had a gun, but it was in the trunk. I didn't think I would need it and whatnot. And, everything was going nice. I'm just laying there and relaxing. I'm watching some birds and stuff. And I could hear her, she's setting up her tripod. She's doing her thing. And all of a sudden, I got that feeling like back home. And I'm like, and I stop and I kind of get up. And of course, she could see me and she's kind of looking at me. And then I'm like looking around. And I go immediately to the trunk, which is like 10 feet from me. I pop the trunk open and I get that particular rifle out and I load it, which I never loaded, even when I've gotten it out a few times. Like on our trip, we were walking around like a couple of like swimming areas and stuff, and I got it. I said, I think we're okay. I just left it, whatever, against a tree. But I didn't even have the ammo was close by. I didn't actually load it or anything. But this time, I loaded it. And I'm sitting there, and she immediately comes over. She's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I don't know. I said, I think I'm getting like some weird vibes down here. And I'm looking. It's weird because I can kind of project it, like I don't know. It's weird, but like if I point a certain way, I can kind of feel, where those vibes are kind of coming from. And I'm looking at this one tree direction constantly. I've never looked behind me. I didn't look to my left. It was always that way. I'm holding that gun. And I said, hey, take the car, turn it around, like point it up where we can just get out of here and leave the doors open and leave it running. And I said, do you want to stay here for a second? And I don't know if she's comfortable with that. And all of a sudden, that, as you know, the infamous wet dog smell, so thick. And she's like puckered up. She's like, oh, that's nasty. And I was like, she goes, it's a Bigfoot. And I was like, but we couldn't see anything. And I was like, yeah. And I said, it's like close, but I said, it's cloaking for sure. And we sat there because even though the trees are really big there, you got big trees, it just opens up more. And it wasn't like back home thick. You could see through there. And very wooded and a canopy and everything, but you could see. And I didn't see, and I'm watching the water. I don't see anything like walking in the water. I don't see like anything disturbing anything. And I'm looking pretty close. The smell leaves. I don't like the feeling leaves, that whatever that is. And so we sat there for a few more minutes and we're thinking about what to do. And I says, well, do you want to look for a footprint or something? I said, or we can leave. She's like, let's look. And she had her camera. And so I said, well, what we're going to do is I want to walk on the right side. You're going to walk on the left. Anything you see, take a picture. Or if I see anything, I'll let you know. You take a picture. And I said, anything. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, it looked like anything. I said, and it looked so close, like really focused. And we're walking. And I mean, we're like taking our time, and we walk like, I don't know, maybe 30 feet, that's about us. It starts getting really thick over there. And it seemed like it was all close by. Didn't see nothing. And right to the left of the car, there's like a big, I don't know, like a big muscadine vine or something, some kind of big viney thing. You can't see through it, but it was like maybe 6 feet tall and like maybe 20 feet long. The car's on this side. We're on the other side of it looking, nothing. We come back to the car, don't see anything, but we're kind of walking around that bush, don't see anything. No prints. We leave. Later that night, we're in a hotel room at this point, and I'm tired, so I'm passed out, and she's over on this other bed, and she's got all this like, got her laptop, and she's photo editing, go through all her stuff, and all of a sudden she just starts like hyperventilating, like she's crying, hyperventilating. I'm like, what's wrong? And I get up and I'm like, what's up? And she's like, look at this picture. She's freaking out. And she goes, I remember now. And I was like, what? And I was like, what are you talking about? And right by that big tree I was looking at on the ground was a print. And she took a picture of it. And I said, you're supposed to tell me. Like, you didn't tell me there's a print there. Like, that was the whole point. And it was right where I thought he crossed, like where I felt like he crossed. And she goes, I know. She goes, it told me. This is where I started thinking more about us. It told me not to tell you. And it said, I'm a bear and it's okay. You'll be okay. She said, that's what it said. I said, it didn't say my name, did it? She goes, no, I don't remember that.
Wow.
And well, hey, there's a little more to the story. So 6 months later or something, I go over there, we're eating, we're talking about this and these kind of things. And she goes, you want to help me go through some of these other photographs? And I'm like, yeah, we can do that. So she gives me a whatever, iPad or something. And I'm like scrolling through. And I said, there's going to be another footprint. I said, I know where he went because that footprint, he went in front of that car. He crossed that road and he went up that mountain or up that road or something. He went that way. I know he did. And I said, there's a footprint somewhere. And I mean, when she takes photographs, she takes like thousands, And I said, there's so many. And it's like, she's like a crime scene investigator, And so I'm looking. And then all of a sudden I go, you know what? She goes, what? I says, look right here. You know what he did? He stepped when that car got turned around. He stepped in the car tracks. He was smart enough to know that I was going to look, and he stepped on those car tracks, and then he hopped out. He knew that car tread would hide his step, and it kind of did. but I can see, they weren't bad tires. I can see the outline of especially the outer two part of the tire, and in the middle of one, you can just see an impression that was like done on top of it. And we were. It was just us. There was no one else out there. Nothing could have laid that impression unless it was fresh.
Yeah,
100%. It's pretty clever.
Yeah, almost beyond clever. Almost
very much.
Seems like something else is at play at that point.
Yeah, and how did it know that this is a whole other area? How did it know that I would even be in it? Well, it did. It probably was wondering how I knew where it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I had my gun out, even pointing towards it. Like, it was too close. That smell seemed like it was like 5 feet away, closer, and it was too close for me. And with my friend next to me, it's like, I'm not gonna let you, like, I don't know what you're up to, but that's too close. For years, we didn't really talk about it because, it wasn't popular 25 years ago to talk about it like it is now. Now I can mention it, and they're like, yeah, they're open. People are so open minded. It's really good, and they're like, hear you out and have questions, or they'll remember something and bring it, to the table, But the reason why I wanted to share it with you really was because it's information that, we don't need to be ignorant of this. Like, there's a reason this is all happening, and we need to try to figure it out, and we need to be educated. And the more we know, the more information we have, then we can start, getting away from theory and start locking down some real ideas. It's there's something going on, 100%.
You've said enough during this conversation to cause me to form a complete new hypothesis for me to start checking out and seeing if I can figure some things out personally.
Yeah. That's the roller coaster,
You never know who's going to have the missing piece of the puzzle, or, who's going to have a piece that fits your piece that might be listening. So yeah, I really appreciate it, man. I'm going to end it for now, but, if you're down, think of some more stuff that you'd be comfortable with, and I'd love to have you back on sometime.
Yeah, just let me know whenever. There's plenty more,
If you've had an encounter with Bigfoot or something else you can't explain and you'd like to share your story on the podcast, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, past episodes, merchandise, everything you need, all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.